Welcome to Lifestyle University here at the beautiful Calam Park in Mesa, Arizona. I'm Gloria, and this pot of basil has made it through the worst summer in Arizona. And how did it make it through that summer? It was outside in the sun on the east side of my house for 24 hours a day, 5 months. It made it through that by having an Olla in the center of it. An Olla is a watering reservoir then you place in a pot, and the plant can get what it needs by pulling the water out of that vessel. And it's right in the center of here, and it was a short pot, so it has a short Olla. We have an Olla making class. That word spelled O-L-L-A is actually pronounced Olla, like the Spanish people do. That is an unglazed earthen vessel used from ancient times to give underground water storage to your plants. Because it is an unglazed vessel and it's porous, the water will be pulled from this buried pot via soil moisture tension to irrigate the soil around and the plants. In fact, those plants will actually adhere their roots to that vessel. This was first used in China about 4,000 years ago and in North Africa. And then the technique spread to arid places all around the world. So here's a picture of commercial Ollas. They're large, usually bulbous vessels, and then they have a skinny neck, and you put a lid on them so the water can't evaporate. So here you have a bare garden. They're going to plant that Olla down in the soil so just the top sticks out. They'll fill it with water, and they'll keep a lid on it, and then they'll plant plants all around it. Then the plants can get their water from that soil and from that vessel. Before you fill that thing with water, you're going to soak it in water so that the whole outside gets wet. It's like priming a pump, and that makes sure that the whole pull from dry to wet will be working. So as the soil is dried out, the soil will pull water from the pot. When the soil is wet because it rained or it hasn't dried out yet and there's no tension, so the water will remain in the Olla. The roots will also seek out the water, as I said before, and they'll attach themselves right to the pot. So if I unpotted this pot, it would be very hard to pull those plants off that Olla. So you'd take it off, then you'd clean that Olla, and then you'd reuse it in another pot. So here's a diagram of how this whole process works. So plants watered in this way do not undergo stress of all the dry climate because they have a constant source of water. This provides not only an efficient way of water and an inexpensive way of watering, it maximizes your garden production because your plants never do without. It minimizes overwatering and water runoff and all the different water losses. So it just happens to be a wonderful thing, and that's why we're showing you how to do this. So if you have a short pot, which this pot, I measured it for the photograph, is about 6 inches deep, then you'd want to use a shorter pot, and maybe your bottom unglazed vessel is going to be just a saucer. If you have a deeper pot, such as the one in the picture, and here's one of those pots, then you'd want to use a taller Olla, such as this, with 2 pots put together. And you can see when that's placed in there, it's going to be the perfect height. And here is a top view down on an Olla, that's this same Olla, placed in the center of a large pot. And you can see how all those plants are spread around it. And when you want to water, I just use a gallon jug. I just pour my water in the hole. You can stick a funnel in it and pour water into the funnel. And then when it's filled, you can place one of these small little jewels over that hole, which will keep it from evaporating. Or like I said, the bottom of that cottage cheese container or any plastic container. And lids sometimes work, you know, depending on the plastic size of a lid. And then that just takes care of the whole problem. So now we're set to do an olla. The cheap and easy way to make an olla is to run to the 99-cent only store and buy a couple of these pots. And then we're going to put them together like so. So the first thing you have to do is you're using two pots. One of the holes has to be plugged because that's going to be your bottom pot. Now this pot is very rough in here. Let's see if this pot is smoother. This one's smoother. We'll make this one be our bottom. Either way, you take some sandpaper. You smooth that to make sure it's going to make a good joint. You're going to need some caulk. Now, so you're going to slice the end off your caulk. You'll need something to puncture down in. To make sure it starts flowing. And you're going to need paper towel. So you can constantly wipe up your mess. Also, so you're going to want to make sure you have a pair of gloves. Because caulk is caustic and it's hard to get off your hands. So just play it safe and put on some gloves. So we already filed our pot smooth with our sandpaper. I'm going to squirt some caulk around that hole that's in the bottom of that pot. And I'm going to place one of these glass flattened beads, or jewels, whatever you want to call them, that you get from the dollar store. Again, you get a whole bag for $1, so you'll have plenty. And just place that over the hole. Doesn't matter if you use the flat side or the curved side. So it's going to seal. So now that's taken care of. Now you want to sand both surfaces that are going to touch. You're going to sand those smooth. And it doesn't take much sanding. You can kind of tell when you do it. Doesn't matter what grit sandpaper you use. It all works. Be smarter if I wiped it with paper towel, I think. Okay. Now, this is not an art class. And it doesn't care what this looks like. The important thing is that you make a good seal. So you want to squirt plenty of caulk around this rim. If it drips into the spot a little bit, don't worry about it. You can wipe it away or just leave it. It's not going to hurt anything. You've got plenty of space in there yet for your water. And if it flops over on the outside, that doesn't matter either. So now you put your two surfaces together. And then you can smooth this caulk to make sure that you've got a good seal. If it looks anywhere like, oh, that's a little thin, we can add more. Okay, now to me this looks a little thin over here. Wipe my hand. Now add just a little more caulk. Now if you're making some of these ollas with a friend, and you're going to have to take your olla home because you're at their house, Then you're going to want to take some of this newspaper that you had covering your work surface and just press it against your Olla to make sure that that sticky icky doesn't get all over your vehicle or whatever you're transporting it in. Okay. So our Olla is done. Now you still have a sticker over the top hole, and you want to keep that top hole covered because spiders love to live down in these things. So if you don't cover that hole, you're almost certain to have a spider. When it comes time to use this, and I have one here that I've made before, you're going to take your Olla, set it down in a 5-gallon pail, soak that Olla for about 5 minutes, and then now we're imagining it wet and full of water, and then we're going to place it in the center of our pot. Then we add the rest of our soil around it and plant our plants here. Or in the case of that, if you're planting basil, you just sprinkle your seeds around the outside and keep them moist and keep water in your Olla. So now we'll make believe we're heading home. We want this not to be sticky in our car. So we stuck some newspaper around it, and now it won't make a mess in the vehicle. Thank you for joining us today.